so I'm not sure I'm going to get it right, but Chitranganin Mubarak. Okay, I can get you like the president of Egypt. I know him. Okay, so she's the program manager at the ICT Agency of Sri Lanka, which is the agency implementing the very first e-development loan of the World Bank. It's a model that we're all interested in, and she works in the Sri Lanka initiative and is responsible for a key program area, namely the e-society part, and it's the goal of which is to take the benefits of ICT to all of society. For this assignment, I've got it right. Well, Sri Lanka government, they cut off half of it. You tell us about it. Okay.
Sri Lanka. You would probably see some commonalities when I talk about it. And before getting on to the society development,
our model.
Before the E-Society Development Initiative is talked about, I'd like to introduce the E-Sri Lanka Initiative. E-Sri Lanka Initiative was launched in 2003, and it was something that was developed by several people coming together, like the government, the private sector, as well as the NGOs. And is it okay? And then subsequently in 2004, the ICT Agency of Sri Lanka was formed by an act of parliament. I think you still don't have
it's not making it to the screen.
Do you want to? Yeah.
Just push the F5 button a few times. Oh, you're doing it from down here. You know how to do it.
Just make sure that it's
There we go.
on the screen and not me. ICT Agency was formed in 2004, and that was the first government-owned private company that was started, and it was a new concept, which was in itself an experiment. And the East Sri Lanka initiative was the key activity that was mandated to us. And now we are the apex body in the country for ICT policy setting as well as implementing the East Sri Lanka initiative. Okay, so what is the East Sri Lanka initiative? It's basically our country's plan to empower the people using ICT. And our vision and that of the East Sri Lanka initiative is taking the dividends of ICT to every village, every citizen, to every business, and to re-engineer the way the government thinks and works. So, well, why do we need an East Sri Lanka? What was wrong with Sri Lanka without the E? So just let's see what the country looks like. We have a population of just under 20 million, and of which about 23% live below the poverty line. And here the poverty line we've taken as people earning less than $2 per day, not $1 per day, $2. $1 we found was not that great. Okay, and of that, 70% of this 23% live in rural areas, which is the white area you see over there. The per capita GDP is US $1,000, but that doesn't sound too bad, but the contribution to that comes largely from the Western Province, which is in and around Colombo, which is the red area. Our literacy, we are really very proud of our literacy rate, which is 93 plus, and that is like on par with other developing countries. But our national ICT literacy is only 10%. And it's held there because Colombo has an ICT literacy of 20%. In some areas of the country, it's as low as 3%. So what we have to do is to take the development from the area, from that red area over there, we got to take it to the rest of the country. Connectivity, access, government, all the development needs to move out into the rest of the country. So that's why we needed ICT, and that's why an East Sri Lanka. This model, you probably will find that it has some similarity to what Peter showed you a while ago, because I think this Nagi, who was the base for that, was the basis for this as well, possibly. We have 5 key program areas held together in the center by the leadership given by the head of government. So basically the ICT agency functions under the President's office. So we get our leadership from the top, and that is really some strength. The key program areas, I'll start with re-engineering government, because that is an area I think all of you all would agree that when you go to get some government service done, I myself I have lost my national identity card and driver's license on 3 occasions, and I've spent hours trying to get replacements, without either you go talk to somebody or you have to go and push your paper from counter to counter. So and that was not so bad because the ID card place is just down the road from where I live. But for somebody who's living in that huge white area, he's got to spend time and money making so many trips to Colombo to get that done. So what do? We need to put these services online so that the people can access it from where they live. But then we don't want to put just the service online because it might be a whole big mess that this government service that we have. So we got to streamline it first. You don't want to computerize a mess. So you streamline it and then put it online. Then the information infrastructure is also needed because if you're living in a rural area, you have this super government services online, but if you don't have the infrastructure, you have no way of accessing it. So we have a rural telecommunication network that is coming up and we have the knowledge centers, which currently we have 380, and our target is 1,000 island-wide, with 3 per divisional secretariat. That's a sort of administrative division in the country. Then you need to have the citizens as well as government servants skilled in ICT in order to deploy those services and for the citizen to access it. So we have ICT skill development program for government officers, all government officers, and for the citizen. We have an average citizen who can follow the citizen course, which is being conducted through the knowledge centers. And if once they get through the exam, we reimburse the course fee, if and when they do get through it. The other one, the investment, ICT investment, that is basically growing the ICT sector. Using it as a means of foreign exchange, making Sri Lanka a BPO destination, and getting more job opportunities and basically growing the ICT sector. All the other program areas use ICT as an enabler. This actually just grows the ICT sector. The e-society program, which I manage and I am responsible for, is like taking all this to those rural communities. The purpose of the e-society program, as you see, is making ICT accessible to everybody and taking the benefits of ICT to everybody. Now, how do you do it? One of the biggest problems in taking ICT to rural areas and making rural people use it is that they don't know ICT. They don't know what ICT is, and they don't know at all what it can do for them. So the first step is awareness. And we've had, we had a focus campaign, we had a TV campaign, we had press, radio. But what worked best was village meetings where somebody actually sat with the community and had discussions with them, and these street dramas. The picture you see over there is of a street drama, which is very humorous and in the local village context, and a lot of people gather to listen to it, and we convey the concept of ICT applications through this kind of activity. And then ICT agency is very small. We have just about 30 professionals, but our focus is island-wide. So we have to work with other people in deploying our applications, and we need to build their capacity in doing so. And the last one, which is the key to the e-society program, is that we have set up a fund, a e-society fund, which has a budget of $3.53 million, and the idea of a fund is we offer grants to spur socio-economic development through the development of ICT applications which will impact on those target groups we were talking of. The grant mechanism has two basic programs. One is the community assistance program and the other the partnership assistance. The community assistance program is one where we give the grants to the community itself. It's not big money, it's like $5,000 each. and the community uses it to deploy an ICT application that will help them in their daily lives. It's really a bottom-up approach. We don't go and tell them you do this. We sit with them and discuss the project, actually discuss what their problems are. Then they would identify, maybe it's roads, they won't identify an ICT application, obviously. They would invariably say they cannot sell their produce, or they don't have a road to get to the city, they don't have access to health facilities, and then it's our duty to help them to match it with some kind of ICT application, prioritize their problems and match it with an ICT application. Then the community takes the grant, community deploys the project, and it's they who run and own it. In order to confirm their ownership, we want them also to make a financial contribution. They make a financial contribution of 5%, 5% in cash, and then in kind another 20%. So in all, the 25% of the project has to be contributed for by the community. But we have a ceiling on hardware and infrastructure. So you can't go to town buying a whole lot of computers and renting out a building and air conditioning it and stuff. In the Partnership Assistance Program, here the beneficiary is the private sector, or state sector, or an NGO. But again, direct beneficiary is that, but then they too have to develop an ICT application, some innovative application that will benefit on the rural disadvantaged population. Here again, we have a ceiling on hardware, mainly because there is a lot of, in previous projects where people have invested heavily on the technological aspect, projects have tended to be not very sustainable in the long run. And the bidding is competitive, and we use standard procurement procedure in awarding those contracts. The implementation arrangements are basically like, as I said, we are very small, and in the e-society program there is just me and 2 others. So what we've done is we've outsourced the day-to-day administration of the whole process to a process consultant who you see over there, Jalya Javardhana and Lilani. They are our process consultants to the ESBI, and they do the day-to-day work, and they have a rural network which enables them to really work at grassroots and bring these proposals up. Then they go to a subject matter experts who review the proposals, and it comes to a grants board who makes the final approval. So it's a totally transparent process, and the grants board and subject matter experts are all independent outside of our agency, so there can be nothing bad about the whole thing. It's very, very clear. The outcome to date, we have been running this, it's a 4-year project. We've run it for about 1.5 years. And our target for community assistance program is 140 grants at the end of the year. We've given out 64, and we have sort of vague targets. The targets by thematic area, just in order to ensure that we don't go overboard in one particular area. But as you can see, in the area of peace, there is nothing. And that is an area we need to address, given the fact that we've been having an ongoing civil conflict for the last 2 decades. But possibly communities don't see peace as an area that they can have any effect on, possibly. The government they are not making much headway anyway, so possibly communities don't think that it is something they can really impact on. What has been most easy for them to come up is with training and capacity building. Basically, like computer classes, which is what they understand. So we are heavy in that area. Training and capacity building, access to learning, and income generation. In the other areas, we are a bit thin. And also, most of the ideas that have come from communities and what they have wanted to do have been really very mundane, not very inspiring. But we have managed, by working really closely with the communities, to come up with a few innovative ones. The first one on there, actually we had no hand in. That was something that came out from the knowledge center itself. Nanasala, by the way, is the name of our knowledge centers. That's what we call them, Nanasala. Nana meaning knowledge and Sala center. So there was one knowledge center ran a online contest using MSN chat in which 225 school children participated. And it was between the knowledge centers, and in the final there were 4 centers who came for the final, and then we awarded prizes. There was a winner, runner-up and stuff. On a similar principle, we have a contest for local content development. Again, we give them the, again run by one of the Nanasalas. We give them the training, and they, on content creation, taking pictures of like areas of archaeological significance, tourist interest, and creating the content, and then uploading it onto a content management platform. And here we are using Enrich. At the moment we are using Enrich, which was given to us through an MOU we have with One World South Asia. The third one is also quite interesting, that is remote medical consultation. There is an area in Sri Lanka, northwestern province, where there is a high incidence of thalassemia patients, which is genetically inherited disease. And there is only one unit in the country that can tend to those that kind of ailment, which is in Colombo. So we have provided for remote medical consultations from that province and the hospital through a webcam, and if in some cases where a blood sample is required, there is a nurse who comes in to draw the blood samples, and it's couriered to the human genetics unit. The best job opportunities also came through Nanasala, a guy thought of it himself. He is compiling a list of jobs that are available. He scans the papers, magazines, and he makes this list, and then he sends off emails to people who are registered with him. It's also quite good. I'll get on to the geographic distribution of the community assistance program. We actually didn't think it would be so widespread. We thought it would be initially concentrated largely in the southern province because that's where we started. But it has been fairly well spread. As you can see, we are very thin in the north, just one, but it's difficult working in the north and the east. East is not so bad. Colombo, Western Province is again low, but that's to be expected. We are not encouraging proposals from the Western Province because they are okay as they are. Then in the Partnership Assistance Program, in our first call for applications was published in August of 2005, and we had 247 applications. We were really inundated. I mean, that's a whole lot. We never expected as much as that. But there again, you can see that we were really heavy in training. I mean, that was the easiest thing for them to conceptualize. And they came up with a whole lot of proposals for training basically developing ICT skills. So of the applications that were received, we shortlisted 86, that is the light blue area, and the dark color is the ones that we actually received. And then from that whole lot, we selected 8 which got awarded, and these were the 8 that were awarded. The first up there is the beneficiary target group is women. Women in Sri Lanka, we are more than half the population, like about 51 or 52%, and we are considered generally a vulnerable group. So this was for documenting incidences of violence against women, and designing a system to capture that data. Also, it gives them the anonymity. A lot of women, when they do are affected by such incidents, don't really report it because they don't want to be identified. But the access points give them anonymity to go and do that, to upload their information. They are given the skills also to do so. And the whole system is linked to agencies that can react to the two incidences that are documented. We have 2 applications being developed for disabled. One is for the visually handicapped, where 200 digital talking books are being produced using the DAISY software. And the other is for developing a CD on sign language, both for those who are the deaf as well as for for those who caregivers for the deaf. Then in the rural communities, we have several projects that have come up. The local language curriculum for grade 6 to 11, you know, I'm sure it's the same as in India, in Sri Lanka, of the children who the pass rate in the GC O-level examination, where the GC O-level is like the first major public exam, is only about 30 to 40% in rural areas, because they don't have adequate access to learning. So there is one project which caters for local language curriculum, grade 6 to 11, and another which seeks to teach English via satellite, and an automated community radio station. Unfortunately, this is stalled. Okay, we have not been able to proceed with this because the government has not given us the license to move on that. The other two, the next one is a trilingual disaster alert system, which gives a text display of FM radio announcements. So we can use it not only at a time of disaster, but non-disaster times as well, like market prices, any information relevant to the community. That's it. I mean, basically the problem have been the lack of awareness, and for people not being able to think outside of the box. You know, they are thinking basically all the time of ICT centers, ICT centers and nothing more, and they can only think of like teaching people to use a computer. And in deploying these grants also we have the problem, because our procurement required that before we give any money, we have to get the communities had to raise a guarantee, which is impossible. They don't have the money, but then our procurement people say you can't give out any money without a guarantee. So those have been problems that we've been, you know, fighting against. Then government policy and regulations, like in the case of the community radio. And the other major problem is intellectual property rights. When a private sector organization comes up with a new application, who owns the IP rights? We cannot go on saying it's ours, because we will stifle innovation. But on the other hand, we need to have access to it so that we can deploy it as freely as we can. So we entered into an agreement that it would be joint ownership, and we have the right to deploy it wherever we want. If they want to, they can do it as well, but we'll be doing it free of charge. And if we want any improvement done, we have to go back to them. But if they are not cooperating, or if they have gone out of business or something, then in that event, we reserve the right to move on to somebody else. And the private sector, ICT private sector, is not interested. I mean, they are interested only in making big software applications and making their money, but they are definitely not interested in doing small applications that would impact on rural communities. And in the community grants, there is no post-project monitoring. That's it. Thank you.